Okay, so I want to talk about unions with you.
Yeah.
Unions, okay, when you think when the average American, I believe, thinks of unions, I think the first thing that comes up was, oh, they're trying to protect the workers around the world, or at least around our country, right? Well, if you look carefully, especially now we're in political season, you're going to see ads come through. And they were involved in Spencer Pratt's trying to take him down, take him out of the race, because look at it, ad paid for by LA unions opposed to Spencer Pratt for mayor. Let's talk about unions and how they go hand in hand with politics.
Yeah, Amber, they're a political machine. They're one of the biggest political machines in the American political process. They spend about $2 billion every 2 years on politics and lobbying because they're wards of government action at the end of the day, Amber. Their privilege and power is a derivative of whether it be the state government in Sacramento or the Los Angeles City Council or the United States Congress. Their power and privilege to compel workers to pay dues that they turn around and use for politics is a function of them winning political campaigns. And boy, oh boy, were they scared to death of Spencer Pratt. I mean, that guy was talking about a radical reform. And unfortunately for them, or I guess fortunately now that they've got the number of votes they need to make sure he doesn't participate in the general election, they've got a guarantee that Karen Bass and Rahman are going to be on their side and on the same side of the negotiating table as they are. So it's very important for them to play politics. And we're talking, Amber, literally billions. I know people talk about, the Soroses and the Kochs and the Steyers investing millions. We're talking about billions to protect their power and privilege. So that's why they're engaged. That's why they're in it. And that's why they're one of the biggest political players in the country.
And I think the only reason why Steve Hilton advanced, I agree with Donald Trump. Well, he said this, but I was already thinking, I'm going to play what Donald Trump had to say about Steve Hilton. Like I said, he said it, but I was thinking the same thing.
Voted in favor of that. It's really a shame, and it's so bad for the country. You'd almost think they hate the country because they can't. They're not stupid people. You can't cheat like they did. And look at the election in California as an example. After a week, they determined that a kid who's leading and had all the mojo, all of a sudden he doesn't make the runoff. And then I hit them hard on that, but I started talking about Steve Hilton, who's a fantastic guy. And I saw them say it was going to be 2 weeks before they knew. And I started hitting them. It's going to happen to Steve Hilton too. It's watch. You got to watch. And they approved Steve Hilton very quickly. They didn't want it. There was too much heat on him. The only reason he got approved, he had all the votes he needed, probably to be first place. But the only reason they approved Steve Hilton, it was going to be 2 weeks. They said it. And then they approved him that night because the heat was on them because they're cheating dogs.
I agree. The heat was on them. We were all talking about this race in California. I think that's the only reason so that they could back off maybe some of the audits that were going on or some of the investigation with their election. I think that was a big part of it, why they were backing off and said allowed Steve Hilton to win second place. Uh, I don't know if you have any opinions on that race at all, but I really think that was a big part of why they let him in win.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, Amber, because the confidence that the American people, let alone Californians and Los Angelinians, if I'm saying that correctly, have in their election process is dissipating by the minute. I mean, you can't have elections that take weeks to decide. And Los Angeles is just one city. We have states like South Carolina that had projected winners by 10 o'clock at night, statewide elections, primaries for senators, primaries for members of Congress. It was all decided quickly. No one can explain to me why it takes 2 weeks other than the fact that they send ballots out to everybody, right? And there is no postmark on these business return envelopes. And so if they just get stamped by being, hey, received by January, whatever it was, 5th or whatever, then they count it. And
Mhm.
I got to tell you, Amber, I mean, we enjoy and like the United States postal system, but they are not very efficient. We right to work survive on mail. And I can tell you, there are days when mail comes in 17, 20, 30 days late. And it doesn't make any sense that this is the way it works out there. And
And don't they have a union? Don't the postal workers have a union?
yeah, they sure do. And they're the ones delivering ballots. And so they know if house is vacant or if someone's moved. And I don't know what happens to that ballot. I assume the right thing to do would be bring it back to the post office and cross it off and say, this person's no longer here. Somehow I think it may work a little differently than that, but I'm just speculating.
I really like your personality. I'm glad you came on my show. You never like I've never met you before, and you never know when you invite someone on the show if you're gonna jive with them. And I'm jiving with you just fine. I really like you very much, and I'm glad you're on my show today because this is an important topic. I've kind of highlighted unions periodically throughout my tenure on my show, but I haven't really dove down into this. But unions really play a big role in politics. And let's talk about the teachers union. In California, it used to be compulsory. That used to force, if you were going to be a teacher, you had to join the union. There was no choice. Somewhere along the lines, I was told that it changed, and maybe you can correct me if this information is not right. Somewhere along the lines, then teachers weren't forced into a union. They could still get hired as a California teacher without being forced into a union. But let's talk about the unions as far as schools go.
Yeah. Well, Amber, let me first tell you that change in the rights of teachers, not only in California but across America, came from a Supreme Court case that we litigated here at the
Oh,
National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation. Our attorneys argued the case. It's called Janus v. AFSCME, and on June 28th, 2018, the very last case of that Supreme Court session, on the last day of the Supreme Court being in session, they decided that teachers and government employees across the entire country could not be compelled to pay unions for the ability to work for government at any level, whether it be at the city level, the county level, or the state level. No worker in America, including any teacher, could be forced to pay the NEA, the National Education Association, or the American Federation of Teachers in order to teach children in America. Prior to that, unions had the power to say, well, you don't really have to join the union, but you can be forced to pay up to 100% of dues in order to keep your job. There's no difference between those two scenarios, frankly. And the bottom line is this: that unions use that quote unquote membership protections that they offer up. And I use my finger quotes because it's not protection at all, really. And they say you must join because maybe someday you'll get sued by a parent or there'll be litigation against you, and we'll help you with that. Well, in the two instances that I remember very clearly, there was a governor from Virginia and a governor from Tennessee that understood this problem and said, you know what, we'll put the teachers under the state insurance umbrella so they can be protected. Guess who was the first institution to oppose that bill? The teachers union, because they knew that was the only hook that they could get to get the teachers to join the union because of their radical positions. And Amber, that's one of the most egregious outcomes of their monopoly control over the government school system in California and across the rest of the country. They're failing our kids. They're failing the taxpayers. They're failing the parents. And enrollment in every body of government education is decreasing because of the failures of the unions and the failures of our elected officials.
There's
Yeah.
there's an elected official in my city, and their slogan is endorsed by unions. And I like barf, like that just makes me not want to vote for you right now. Just because that's the big thing, endorsed by unions. Oh, good. Great. Now we know where you stand.
Yeah. Well, actually, just in Sacramento, within the last month and a half, I think it was, we helped teachers at a charter school, the St. Hope Charter School in Sacramento, throw out the unions from their workplace using a legal strategy that initially they thought they were covered under the state law, the State Employee Relations Board there, your PERB. And we argued the case that they were not necessarily public employees. They were private sector employees under the National Labor Relations Act. We were able to get them a vote to throw the union out, and throw the union out they did. In San Diego, ironically, we helped teachers at the Gompers Preparatory School, the Samuel Gompers Preparatory School, get rid of their union. You may not know this, Amber, because no one teaches it anymore, but Samuel Gompers was the founder of the American labor movement going back in the late 1800s, 1900s. They named it after the father of the American Labor Union, and the teachers there said, enough, we want the union out. So it was a great victory for us. And we have 17 attorneys that do nothing but help individual employees in the government, in the private sector, and in the public sector exercise what limited rights they have. And your point about not being forced to pay dues to the union anymore to keep your job in government is true. And that was the result of a victory we had at the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of one employee who had the courage to stand up and fight. One employee said, I'll fight. We got him his day in court at the highest court in the land. And one employee got this precedent for every government worker in America. It's a great story, and it gives you hope that we need to keep fighting, Amber. And I know you will.
Have you come across any unions that actually really help the workers, or are they all just a political arm that fund into the Democrat Party? Because I don't know, do any of them fund the Republican Party? And if so, are they like would they be like the establishment Republicans, if they do contribute to the Republican
Yeah, they
Party?
do. I mean, the ratio, Amber, is ridiculous. I mean, let's take the Donald Trump election in 2024. Donald Trump won a majority of all the voters in the country, won the Electoral College, and he won a majority of union households of private sector workers across the country. So the union households and union members voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for every $1 he got from the labor unions, Kamala Harris got 292. Now, I'm a government school graduate, so my proportion may be off, but I think if you do the math, if you got a calculator, that's 99.7% of their money went to the Democrat Party and the Democrat candidate for president, as opposed to the Republican candidate. And the Republican candidate had a majority of union households in the private sector voting for him to be president of the United States.
Wow. So tell us about your organization. What does this National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation do, and how do people get involved or reach out to you guys?
Yeah, real simply, Amber, we've been around since 1968. We have 17 employee lawyers that do nothing but help employees. We do that for free. They can go to our website at nrtw.org, nrtw.org, and they can get lots of questions answered from the website, or they can talk to an attorney about their rights in the workplace. We've argued 18 cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of individual employees, like I said, had the courage to stand up and fight. And we have won many of those cases. So most of the precedents related to individual rights vis-a-vis forced unionism have come from litigation that we've supported and we've argued at the various courts across the country, including not such a great record in the Ninth Circuit out in California. But
Well, yeah, I'm a part of the Ninth Circuit. They're the worst. They're the worst court there is. I hate the Ninth Circuit Court.
Yeah, yeah. And then we have a legislative operation called the National Right to Work Committee, where we track legislation and we get involved in legislative battles in every state in the country and in the United States Congress. And we've been doing that since 1955. Our goal is to protect workers by passing right to work laws at the state level and ultimately going into the federal law that gives union officials this dramatic power to force you, Amber, to pay them as a condition of keeping your job. We want to repeal that as well. And we have 26 states that have right to work laws today, 24 states, unlike Washington, Oregon, California, they have forced unionism. You can still lose your job in the private sector if you don't pay union dues. So a lot of work still to be done, but that's the work that we do.
Let me ask you this, like a year ago, I think it was about a year ago, the biggest story was on the Eastern Seaboard, and some of those people weren't able to go to work. Their unions forced them to not to work because their unions were forcing a pay raise, and they were making already really good money. If someone was in a situation like that where they really don't want to stop working, but their union's making them, is that a reason to come to you guys? Or are you just about compulsory type work situations?
Yeah, no, Amber, thanks. That's a great question. And that's absolutely why a worker should call us, because you have rights. You can go to work and you can continue getting a paycheck to support your family. But if you don't do it absolutely correctly, the union can fine you in an inside union court. We are representing grocery store employees in Colorado and Washington State right now who've been fined up to $4,000 for going to work and crossing a picket line. We've represented and helped Caterpillar employees that were fined up to $40,000 for crossing a picket line. If you want to do that, the foundation's here to answer those questions and help you navigate what is a very difficult path to exercise what limited rights you have. But that's right on point for the work that we do.
Oh, that's wonderful. So if people want to learn more or contact you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, they can do it on the internet, nrtw.org, or we have an 800 number, 800-336-3600. They can call, they can talk to a lawyer and a paralegal about their case. And if it's in our scope and our mission, we'll be glad to help, at least help you at a minimum, exercise the right you have. Or in the case of our worker in Illinois who went all the way to the Supreme Court, take your case from district court to appellate court to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll do that all for you in the name of liberty and freedom.
That's impressive. Well, thank you, Mark, for stopping by the show today. I appreciate you.